Welcome back, everybody. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give us a like too. Sharing the episode really helps us out, so if you're enjoying the show, let your friends know about it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about President Biden's picks for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And wow, what a diverse group. There's politicians, musicians, fashion icons. I mean, talk about a mix of people. Yeah, it's a really interesting group for sure. I think it gives us a glimpse into President Biden's values and what he considers important contributions to American society. Okay, so this is like the biggest honor a civilian can get, right? Absolutely. It's like a lifetime achievement award for people who've made really exceptional contributions to the US or, to the world. So the White House put out a statement saying all these people embody what they called positive American values. But honestly, some of these names are probably going to raise a few eyebrows, maybe even stir up a little controversy. Well, yeah, I think that's kind of part of what makes these awards so interesting. It gets us thinking about who we consider role models, what we value as a society. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's jump into some of the names that are making headlines. Starting with the political figures, Hillary Clinton's selection is definitely generating a lot of buzz. Yeah, and it makes sense when you consider the long history between Biden and the Clintons. I mean, he was vice president under Bill Clinton, and they both have a lot of respect for each other's work. They've both spoken about that publicly a bunch of times. In fact, pretty recently, actually, the Clintons gave Biden their Global Citizen Award. That was just last September. Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that. So there's a lot of mutual respect going on there. Maybe even a personal friendship on top of the professional relationship. It makes you wonder if this back and forth with the awards means we'll see them working together again in the future. Yeah, it definitely suggests a strong bond between them, both professionally and personally. And it shows how much Biden values her work in public service, both as First Lady and as Secretary of State. Okay, then there's Robert F. Kennedy. He's being honored posthumously. And I've heard this one means a lot to President Biden personally. Yes, Biden has said many times that RFK was one of his political heroes, and there's even a bust of Kennedy in the Oval Office. So yeah, you can tell this award is a very personal one for Biden. It gives us some insight into Biden's own political ideals, the people he looks up to and what shapes his own thinking. Definitely. And I think it also reminds us about RFK's legacy, his commitment to social justice and equality, which is something that continues to resonate today. And there's another posthumous award going to George Romney, Mitt Romney's father. Yeah, he may not be as familiar to some of the younger folks, but George Romney was a really important figure in the Republican Party back in the day. He was the governor of Michigan for a while, and then he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Nixon. Okay, so let's move on to some of the picks that might be considered a bit more unconventional. Unconventional maybe, but no less deserving. True. Okay, so first we have Bono, the lead singer of U2. What do you think makes him stand out in this group? Well, of course, most people know Bono from his music with U2, right? But his advocacy work is huge too, especially when it comes to global health issues. Like, for example, he did a lot of work behind the scenes to get funding for PEPFAR. That's the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief. And that program has literally saved millions of lives in the fight against AIDS, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Wow, I had no idea Bono was so involved with PEPFAR. That's amazing. So he's getting this award for both his music and for all his humanitarian work. Exactly. And it kind of shows how the Medal of Freedom can go to people who've done great things in more than one area and who've used their platform to make a real difference in the world. Okay, so another name that's sparking a lot of conversation is George Soros. He's definitely a controversial figure. Yeah, George Soros is he's a fascinating guy. He's a really successful investor, and he's known for his philanthropy, supporting liberal causes and working to promote democracy and human rights all over the world. And that's actually what the White House highlighted in their statement about his award. But he's also someone who people have very strong opinions about, especially conservatives. Some people really dislike his political activism and the causes he supports. I mean, there are even some wild conspiracy theories about him out there. Yeah, that's true. I mean, some critics point to the organizations he funds, groups that advocate for things like changes in drug policy or criminal justice reform. And they say that those changes would actually be bad for society. And then there are others who question his influence on international politics, like how he supports regime change in certain countries. So yeah, it's important to remember there are a lot of different perspectives on his work and its impact on the world. It's definitely a pick that's going to get people talking, And it shows how this award can be seen in so many different ways depending on your politics and what you already think about George Soros. Okay, well, moving on to someone who's definitely made a big impact on how we think about science and how it affects policy. Bill Nye is another interesting choice. Yeah, Bill Nye. I mean, everyone remembers the science guy from when we were kids. And these days, he's been really outspoken about climate action and, trying to get people to understand and care about science more. Yeah, and he's actually worked with the Biden administration directly on some of their climate initiatives. He even interviewed President Biden back in 2021 to talk about the Build Back Better plan. Right. And I think having him on this list shows how serious this administration is about tackling climate change. And it shows they're willing to work with well-known figures to try to get their message out there. It's a smart move, too, because so many people grew up watching Bill Nye. And now those people are adults. A lot of them are probably already involved in climate activism, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about some of the picks that are making the most headlines, but there are so many other interesting people getting this award, too. Yeah, let's talk about some of those other names. From the entertainment world, we've got Denzel Washington, Michael J. Fox, Lionel Messi, and Irvin Magic Johnson. I mean, that's some serious talent right there. Yeah, you've got actors, athletes. Each one of them has really left their mark on their field and on pop culture in general, like Denzel Washington with his amazing acting career. And then you've got Michael J. Fox, who's been so open about his struggles with Parkinson's disease and become such a strong advocate for research. And then you have Lionel Messi. He's arguably the best soccer player in the world. And Magic Johnson, who did so much for basketball and then became a huge voice in the fight against HIV and AIDS. And then there's Anna Wintour. She's been the editor-in-chief of Vogue forever. And her influence extends way beyond fashion, right? Oh, absolutely. I mean, she's a fashion icon, obviously, but she's also a powerful figure in media and politics. She was a big supporter of Biden's presidential campaign, and she even hosted some fundraisers for him. So yeah, her impact goes way beyond the runway. Speaking of big names in science, we can't forget about Jane Goodall. Her work with chimpanzees totally changed the way we think about primates. Yeah, it's amazing. She wasn't just watching chimps in the wild. She was really challenging all these old ideas about how different humans are from other primates. Like, she showed that chimps have these complex social structures and they're way more intelligent than people used to give them credit for. And her research has been hugely important for primatology conservation, all sorts of things related to animal welfare. Her story's so inspiring. She just followed her passion and ended up making discoveries that changed our whole understanding of where we fit in the natural world. Totally. Okay, and then we've got some more posthumous awards too, including one for Fannie Lou Hamer. She was a major figure in the civil rights movement. Yeah, Fannie Lou Hamer's story is amazing. She fought so hard for voting rights and racial equality, and she had to deal with so much adversity and just terrible treatment during the civil rights movement. Yeah, I mean, think about her work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and her speech at the 1964 Democratic National Convention, and all the work she did to try to get Black people registered to vote in Mississippi. And all this while she was facing violence and threats, people trying to intimidate her. She never gave up. It's powerful that she's being recognized along with all these other incredible people. It reminds us that the fight for social justice is still going on. Yeah, it's a way to honor her legacy and to acknowledge all the sacrifices made by those who came before us in the fight for a more just and equitable society. And we've talked about all these amazing people who are getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom, but there's one name that's noticeably absent from the list. Former President Donald Trump. Right, and it's interesting because in the past, former presidents have usually gotten this award. It's been seen as a way to show national unity and to recognize, the work they did for the country, regardless of political differences. Yeah, so this is definitely a break from tradition. And it's hard to ignore the political implications. I think it shows just how divided things are in our country right now. And it shows how much tension there still is surrounding Trump's presidency. Some people will see this as a deliberate snub. Like Biden is intentionally excluding Trump. But other people say, well, this is just a consequence of Trump's actions. All the controversy and the things he said and did, especially his role in the January 6th insurrection. Yeah, I mean, it definitely raises questions about how we judge our presidents after they leave office and who we consider worthy of being honored as national heroes. It's a really complex issue with no easy answers, and it's something that's going to be debated for a long time. But for now, it's interesting to think about all these people who are getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Their stories say a lot about what it means to be American. They represent all these different experiences, all the good things and the bad things about this country. It's like a snapshot of where we are right now. Exactly. It makes you think about what we value as a nation, what qualities we admire and what kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to put a question out there to our listeners. If you could give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to anyone, who would it be and why? Yeah, think about the people who inspire you, the people who have made a difference in your life or in the world. What qualities or achievements would you look for in someone who deserves this kind of recognition? Yeah, it really is. It makes you realize how a simple thing like an award ceremony can get so many people talking about these bigger issues. And sometimes, it even makes us question our own beliefs about, heroism, what it means to be successful. Totally. Like these choices, they really force us to confront what we think is worth celebrating as a society. And that can lead to some really interesting conversations. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we've done a good job of breaking down this whole list of Presidential Medal of Freedom recipients. What do you think? Yeah, I think so. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about politics, entertainment, science, activism, and even, some deeper stuff about what it takes to be considered an American hero these days. It's been a fascinating conversation for sure. I hope our listeners got as much out of it as we did. Yeah, I think the most important thing is that we showed just how different all these people are and all the different ways they've contributed to the world. And there's no one definition of a hero or a successful life. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. Right. I mean, every single one of these people has made their own unique mark on the world. And that's something we can all appreciate. Okay, so before we sign off, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you enjoyed this episode. And as always, sharing is caring, so spread the word. And definitely leave a comment telling us who you would give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to. We really want to know what you think. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those big questions coming.